Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
And yes, the show is Meanwhile Here on Earth. I am your host, Peter Robbins, and good evening, or afternoon, or morning. Tonight's show is a panel discussion on a subject we come back to irregularly, but most importantly. It has to do with the subject of UFO abduction and how it continues to be treated, mistreated, ignored, misrepresented by major media, especially regarding some of the really huge media offerings on cable and network and downloading land. Abduction remains a very live wire, I think, among those who keep the secrets, those who move the chess pieces about, and the media institutions that they own or control. And on this panel, each of my guests is distinguished in the field, authors, experiencers, abductees, lecturers, and good friends. My co-host on this particular show is Kathleen Marden. Kathleen is a UFO researcher, author, and lecturer who earned her BA degree from the University of New Hampshire and participated in graduate studies in education at the University of Cincinnati. During her 15 years as an educator, Kathy innovated, designed, and implemented model educational programs, held a supervisory position, coordinating, training, and evaluating educational staff. She taught adult education classes on UFO and abduction history, and for 10 years served as MUFON's field director of field investigator training, and another 10 years as director of MUFON's experiencer research team. She is also the recipient of the International UFO Congress Lifetime Achievement Award. Presently, she is a MUFON Lifetime member, benefactor, and research consultant for the ERT. She sat on the advisory board of the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Encounters and has worked on 4 research studies on UFO abductions experiencers with nearly 5,000 participants. She is primary author or co-author of several books, including her bestseller and with scientific ufologist and lecturer Stanton Friedman, Captured: The Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience, and 2 additional books with Stan, Science Was Wrong and Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers. Her book with Denise Stoner, The Alien Abduction Files, includes their investigation of 6 intergenerational cases of ET contact. Her 5th book, Extraterrestrial Contact: What to Do When You've Been Abducted, is a comprehensive guide on UFO abduction phenomena and a self-help book for UFO abductees. Her latest book is Forbidden Knowledge, A Personal Journey from Alien Abduction to Spiritual Transformation. Deborah Jordan Kauble was the central figure in Bud Hopkins' international bestseller Intruders, The Incredible Visitations at Copley Woods. That was published in 1987, and in 1992, Hopkins' book was made into a CBS miniseries of the same name, with the wonderful character actress Mare Winningham playing the role of Deb. In 1994, she co-authored with her sister Kathy Mitchell, Abducted: The Stories of Intruders Continues. Deborah's second book, Extraordinary Contact: Life Beyond Intruders, was published in 2022. She is a former Indiana MUFON investigator, co-founded her own paranormal group, Paranormal Underground, and along with co-founder Greg Kauble, co-hosts the Midwest Paratalk Radio, which live streams every Thursday night at 9 on YouTube. She is also co-host of Voices of Contact every Friday night at 9, also on YouTube. Over the past 30 years, Deb has appeared on many TV and radio programs and was a cast member of the documentary The Observers, which can be seen on Amazon Prime. She has spoken about her experiences at various conferences around the nation, is a retired auto industry worker, cosmetologist, Red Cross volunteer, member of Mensa, wife, mother, grandmother, and new great-grandmother. Deb lives in Indiana with her husband of 30 years and their 2 Yorkies. Mike Cellend's 2015 book, The Messengers, was met with high praise and with good cause. In it, he explores the mysterious connections between owls, synchronicities, and UFO abduction. In it, it was his firsthand experiences with these elusive events that were the foundation for his research. The book is also a personal memoir and a journey of self-discovery. Mike's website, hiddenexperience.blogspot.com, explores these events and their connection to the alien contact phenomena. It also features extended audio interviews with visionaries and experts examining the complexities of the overall UFO experience. Mike is also considered an expert in the skills of ultralight backpacking, mountain climbing, and other outdoor activities, and is the author of multiple books on this, and also The Messengers, his seminal book on owls and UFOs and synchronicities, Hidden Experience, and the novel, The Unseen, also Self-Rescue. He is a wonderful illustrator and artist, and you'll be able to see that work in some of his books. Denise Stoner had an educational background in business and psychology and is a certified hypnotist, earning her certification through hypnosis and regression training at the Hypnotic Research Society and advanced forensic regression studies through the National Guild of Hypnotists Incorporated. She holds educational forums, both public and private gatherings for abduction experiencers, and her involvement in the UFO field spans more than 40 years. Denise also has a background in paranormal investigation and research and is now a support provider for OPUS, which stands for the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support, Director Les Velez. Stoner is co-author, along with Kathleen Marden, of the Alien Abduction Files, and is proud to have been a part of the MUFON UFO network for more than 25 years. She also held the state director position of Florida and remains with MUFON as a consultant for the Experiencer Research Team. Her retirement, if you want to call it that, from the federal government, after spending 12 years with the U.S. Navy doing background investigations for new recruits wanting to enter the nuclear power school, has allowed her to expand her work with UFO research and investigation. Denise has appeared on TV to include appearances on TV have included on the Travel Channel, PBS West Florida with Charlie Carlson, and a guest on many radio shows. Current projects include research into how past lives, possible abductions, and paranormal experiences may all connect in past or present history. Last but not least, Dr. Irene Scott holds degrees in veterinary medicine, astronomy, and biology, and has taught at the Ohio State University College of Medicine and the University of Nevada. She is a published author, and her articles and papers have appeared in scientific journals, magazines, and newspapers. Her photography has appeared on TV, in exhibits, in magazines, books, and newspapers. The Defense Intelligence Agency employed her in a PhD level, which is a GS-11, research in satellite photography involving aircraft identification with above top secret security clearances. She was also employed by the Defense Mapping Agency, Aerospace Center, using satellite photography. Scott has been sent for work-related purposes to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and was a volunteer astronomer at the Ohio State University Radio Observatory. She served on the MUFON board of directors, is a MUFON consultant in psiology and astronomy, and is a field investigator who takes a scientific approach to the UFO phenomena. Welcome back to the show, Kathleen, Deb, Mike, Denise, and Irene.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we've run out of time, I'm sorry to say. I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. And those were heavily redacted introductions, but it was important to me that our audience, those who are not familiar with any of you, had a basically clear introduction of who you are in the field that we work in. And Kathy, I'd like to begin by simply turning this over to you to give us first maybe some general background on the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case, why it's so singularly important in the work that we do, and more recently, some of the attacks and misrepresentation that has been coming at you and that you have been taking an inordinate amount of time addressing more recently than not.
I'd be happy to. I believe that I know everything that there is to know about the Betty and Barney Hill case. I was 13 when it occurred and heard about it on the day that they arrived home after having had a close encounter with a UFO in New Hampshire's White Mountains. There was a tremendous amount of information, details that they had conscious recall for, including a close encounter with a silent hovering craft, my uncle's observation through binoculars of entities on board that craft that on September 26, 1961, my aunt typed in a letter to NICAP. They had already made a report to the Air Force. So we have that as evidence as well. We know that the NICAP report states that the craft was so close that Betty and Barney feared that there might be contaminated. Also, that Barney observed through binoculars beings, figures who were dressed in black, shiny uniforms. He told Walter Webb from NICAP, less than a month later, that they were somehow not human. This is very clear in the reports. And I think that their conscious recall of what occurred is most important. But that is the part that is being ignored. They told the Air Force officer who interviewed them from Pease Air Force Base that when the craft swooped down, it was the size of a dinner plate at arm's length. Keep in mind that the full moon is the size of an aspirin at arm's length. So this was huge. Yet, the deniers continue, as they always have, to say that the Hills saw nothing more than a light in the sky. They completely ignore this part. I was at a conference in the White Mountains with many of the skeptics and my Aunt Betty back, it was in the 1990s, I believe. Carl Flock was there. You might recognize that name. Marcel Truzzi was there. Robert Schaefer, a host of skeptics. And Betty and I took them to the close encounter field. We got out of the car. Betty described precisely what she saw and what Barney saw. This information has been made very clear. It's in the archival records. Yet still, Betty is being portrayed as a delusional woman who saw nothing more than a light in the sky. Their character is being brought into question, and all of the original investigators said that they were of very high character. Barney, when he was discharged from the Army, ended up having a character reference as excellent. Betty also was of excellent character. This was judged by the scientists and other individuals who investigated this case initially. So this is an objective evaluation, unbiased. And in my investigation, I also was skeptical and unbiased and worked with Stanton Friedman several years after my, probably 15 years after my investigation, formal investigation had begun, when I invited him to join me in writing Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience, where we documented the evidence in the archival records, the scientific reports, the report to the Air Force, the statements to Walter Webb and NICAP, letters to investigators, and scientists, and taking a skeptical approach regarding sightings that Betty had later on in life, where she was calling in craft. And I knew far less about people's ability to do that back in those days when I wrote that book. But still, we need to set the record straight. It is not right that Betty and Barney are being misrepresented. When I have written to shows to attempt to set the record straight, different podcasts that I've listened to, the people always come back to me with, well, there's a lot of emotion around this case. Well, I think that the emotion is coming from them because they're denying the content of the evidence. I certainly have not given them an emotional response. I have simply laid out the evidence. And I find that when I do that, they take it down so that no one else can read it. So to me, it is strong emotions for denial on their end. And, you know, I've known of this for many, many years, dating back to the movie that was made, the UFO incident, the made-for-TV movie. Yes. When in Philip Klass's correspondence files, he said that when their case was going on to national television and would be viewed by hundreds of thousands of people, he knew that he had to take a stronger stance to convince the public that this was not true. I could talk forever about his background, his FBI file, which is not complimentary at all. Let me just say that. You can learn much more about that investigation and also the deniers in the book that I wrote with Stanton Friedman, Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers. It's all laid out there. But I'm going to end my conversation now and allow others to speak.
Yeah. Question to start with. Can you tell us a little bit about how Betty and Barney's experience in a book that has been out a few years, I think, tried to pass off Barney's whole experience as some psychological construct based on feeling prejudiced against because he was a black man, and that the event really never happened, and it was this Jungian. I mean, it's insulting, and it's funny without being funny. It's outrageous. It's
Yes, it
infuriating.
is.
But this was, I believe, a Harvard affiliate writer who came out with this nonsense.
Oh, there has been so much nonsense published. There's nonsense regarding Barney's mental state, the idea that Barney was a weak man, that he would do or say anything that Betty asked of him, that he did not have a mind of his own, and on and on and on. And as a counter to that, I have to say that Barney was politically active in the state of New Hampshire and locally. He was appointed to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights in 1965. He was given an award by Sergeant Shriver from the U.S. Office of Economic Opportunity for his role as director of a group who set up the Rockingham County Community Action Program in New Hampshire. He was given an award by the Archdiocese of New Hampshire for setting up a literacy program in a time when people had to pass a literacy test in order to vote. He spoke throughout the state of New Hampshire on civil rights. He wrote to the editors of newspapers, "Is this a weak man without a mind of his own?" I knew Betty and I knew Barney very well. And, Betty she was a competent woman. Let me put it that way. She was not a woman, and I was raised in that family, so she was like me. We spoke our mind, and sometimes men would push back against us. And when Betty did that, and Barney didn't like what she was saying, he made fun of her. He did not accept and absorb everything that Betty said. There's also the preposterous story that there was only a light in the sky, that they were so extraordinarily tired that they were hallucinating, which is false. That's in Barney's statements that this is false. And the preposterous story goes on that Betty had these dreams, and Betty was a lifelong science fiction fan, and Betty was delusional, and on and on and on. Complete lies shown by other investigators, not just myself, to be complete fiction. And, the idea is that Barney just was so weak that he absorbed Betty's dreams and on with the story. It is preposterous. He told Betty not to be ridiculous, that her dreams were only dreams. And that's the approach he took toward Betty's dreams.
I have a question for each of you to respond to in your own ways. Thinking back 10 years ago, how different the world that we inhabit as experiencers, abductees, researchers, writers, authors has changed. Every year now, more and more people care less and less what other people think about what they think about the subject. People who would have never said a word in public, especially folks in the profession, so to say, the law, academics, medicine, science, are now very outspoken, some of them holding rather extraordinary views as to the UFO, UAP phenomena. We are now seeing irregularly, the subject discussed in the halls of power, House of Representatives. And as people get more comfortable with the notion that not only is this not a joke, but that there really is something to it and the implications for humanity, there seems to be more pushback, and it's really one of the reasons we're here tonight, on the actual UFO abduction subject as opposed to lights in the night sky, radar returns, the Tic Tac case, whistleblowers, that this is something that the secret keepers, for any number of understandable reasons, can't allow to come out quite yet. And so they are attacking it one way or another, or undermining it in their own ways. Deb, can I ask you to start? Your thoughts on this and how it might have, that you've experienced it to some degree in your being a very public person around this subject.
Well, when I first started to talk about it like 40 years ago, most people were kind. I mean, they, in my face, I'm sure they rolled their eyes after I left the room, but they weren't outwardly, rude, and they didn't attack me, generally speaking. But I've noticed, especially in the last 10 years, but I have a granddaughter that's 19, and her friends, now it's nothing for them to see something on TV about UFOs or aliens. And I will hear them, and my granddaughter be like, that's cool. I mean, I never thought I would live to see that day, back in 1983 for sure. And so that's a good thing. But then I'm also, I've been involved in, and mainly I watch different chat groups with academic and scientific heads that ponder and talk about the UFO, UAP, NHI experience and everything, but none of them are experiencers. And it kind of pisses me off in a way. I feel annoyed because I'm like, you're sitting, and I keep my mouth shut because I don't have that kind of confidence around those people. I feel dumb. But I've got a high school diploma and a beauty school certificate, and these guys are all PhDs and everything else, right? But I'm thinking to myself, I'm sitting right here, and I've been trying to tell anyone who would listen for the last 42 years what I saw and what's happened to me. And a lot of times those kind of people ignore or blow me off or pass me by. I've been told by people, and I was also, the attention was made to me many years ago that somebody in the military, had put it out on message boards that I was just a bored, lonely little housewife that was looking for some excitement, and so that's what all this June 3083 and stuff was. And I thought, this person, A, has never met me, has never talked to me. This person, if he knew anything about me, he would know that I was a single mom with 2 kids and working 2 jobs. The last thing I needed was any excitement, or I was not bored. I didn't have time for this. I didn't go out and look for this. It came to me, and but people put that out there and people believed it because my story, and I understood that my story was wild. I was my own skeptic, I went out before even Bud came, trying to figure out what could cause these things possibly, trying to find. When I reached out to Bud, I reached out to him because I was hoping he could tell me what it was, and then everything would be okay, But now, like I said, I see these folks. They're smart people and they have great ideas and great theories, and I'm glad they're at least thinking about it. But I've had samples of my dirt in my backyard for 42 years. They even survived the tornado. I've tried to give them to people. Nobody wants it. Nobody's interested. I have the MRIs of my brain. I started showing white spots in my brain, and when I was in my 30s, I developed cataracts and macular degeneration in my 30s. After all that blasting in the yard. We had the mark that was left in the yard for years. We had independent witnesses. We had all kinds of other weird things happen. But they don't want to hear that. And I've been yelling it to the rooftops for anybody would listen. And, people just don't want to hear it. So, but I'm not going to stop. because I'm like you said, I don't care what people think about me anymore. The people who were there, the people who know me, they know the truth. That's all I care about. But I would like to just, maybe, especially the medical stuff. I have so much ridiculous medical, and it's all so weird. I can't tell you how many doctors I've had look at me and go, "Oh my God, I've never seen anything like that in my life." Somebody just note that somewhere for future reference, because things will come out. There are millions of me out there.
Yeah.
And I hope if I talk enough, maybe somebody else will come along and maybe not be afraid to. But
Yes.
it has gotten better, but it has a long way to go. And they need to include experiencers in their disclosure narrative, which I don't even believe in that kind of disclosure anyway, because we're one of the most important pieces of the puzzle. We were there. You're talking about stuff like, on paper, we were there. Yeah. We saw it. We lived it. And I'll answer questions to anybody. And I don't charge anybody any money for it. You just ask me and I'll tell you.
I'll ask you a question real quick, Deb.
Okay.
We're going to have to charge you money, though.
If I may. I was going to say something about this young lady's cred. I became an instant. I'm going to show this picture. I hope it's okay, Deborah.
Okay.
We'll let you know after.
You kind of scared me there.
That up, didn't it? I became an instant fan of this young lady when I saw this picture right here.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, let me tell you.
Look at that look with that shyster.
Jesus.
Well, he wrote some nasty stuff about Mom and me in one of his books. And it was brought to my attention. And then he was at a conference that I was at. I never met him in my life, never talked to him. Mom didn't either. And I thought, how can he write all this stuff about Mom and I when he doesn't even know us? He's never even talked to us. So I chased this dude down. It took me 2 days to get him cornered where he wouldn't be able to run away from me. And when I got up to him, I said, why you write all that stuff? And I wasn't crazy or scream or cuss or whatever. I just said, why did you write all that stuff about my mom and me? You don't even know us. I would have been more than happy to answer any questions that you had. Well, people started figuring out who I was talking to, and I was saying there was a little crowd gathered, and that's when that picture got taken. And, he just stumbled all over his words and said, well, your mother raised a really fine young lady, and just all kinds of stuff that didn't make any sense. But he did try to avoid me, and then he definitely avoided me for the rest of the weekend. But that's the personality I've developed. It's like, okay, you can talk shit about me if you want. That's fine. You're entitled to. But, I'm also entitled to an explanation as to why, because it's me you're talking about. So if you can't dish it, don't dish it out if you can't take it. So.
Denise, you have been at this for more than 40 years. As an experiencer yourself and working with so many people, has it been your observation that, none of us are doing nothing all day except watching UFO documentaries. It just doesn't work like that in our reality in our lives. But in your, and I see Denise has just disappeared off our screen. She may still be hearing me, but I'm going to put this question to Irene in the meantime. Irene, as a scientist, as an astronomer, as a credentialed academic who has had these experiences, do you observe that the forces that be are pushing harder to make this seem more challenging or more problematic than it is, as opposed to other areas of UFO studies?
Yeah, they accept things like, slightly accept things like the Tic Tac, where there's radar, and people see it through machinery, and it can be recorded and things like that, and they sort of accept distant views, but they say it can't get any closer. Well, why can't it get closer? If we do animal experiments, we don't just study in the field, we take animals in and do experiments in them. And they could read Facebook and know all this about us too, but anyway, maybe with abductions after Facebook came out. but they don't accept experience. And that's just as valuable as hardcore science because it's something that happens. I mean, science is said to be based on controlled experiments. Well, that's nice, but you don't control the universe. And people can have experiences that aren't controlled that still happen. And I think science should be alert to, should study experiences instead of just saying, well, it has to be this far away and through a, radar electronically gathered the information. So I think science has some problems that it doesn't, that needs to work on.
Irina, do you think that there is a safe side to ufology and a side that is not safe to speak about?
Good question.
What do you mean?
If a person is speaking, for example, maybe to the Congressional Oversight Committee, is there a safe side? Are there certain topics that are safe to discuss, whereas other topics are not safe and could result in threats of harm?
Yeah, I think abductions is not safe. So if you get a UFO in a scientific instrument, then it's safe, sort of, although it'll be criticized. But if somebody says, well, I was abducted, they throw it out. And I mean, they've invented statistics to study things that you don't understand. You should take not only observations through machines and things, but you should take raw observations, collect them, and do statistics on them just like you would anything else, and study them. I mean, like science used to say, there's no such thing as meteors. They'd say, there's no rocks in the sky, so they can't, fall out of the sky or something illogical like that. But then finally they figured out that rocks fall from the sky. But before that, they could have taken observations that people went out and saw things, coming down, and studied statistically that so many people saw this. And you'd still get information even if scientists doesn't have any hardcore controllable experiments. And it seems like, to me, observations are an important part of science because you don't control the universe. You don't know everything. And you still get information from observations.
One of the really important points you bring up, Irina, is in the world of law and to a degree science, personal observation and firsthand accounts are valuable. In the law in general, firsthand accounts purely by themselves have been known to convict people of capital crimes. But it's almost like things are rewired when it comes to the subject of UFOs and UAPs, in that, well, let's have a little latitude here. We're talking about flying saucers from other planets, so let's take this account with a grain of salt. Or, this person's having their 15 minutes of being in the limelight and maybe having a thrill thinking that what they have this hallucination about is really real, so let's humor them. But again, we will convict people of capital crimes with testimony. And yet in some of the best accumulations of oral history or accounts, and I would number among those the books of Tom Carey and Don Schmidt, the Roswell Witness series, are very compelling. But again, the mantra here, I think, is alien abductions can't be, therefore they're not, therefore there's something else. So let me explain them away for you. Does that ever come at you, Denise? Because again, you've been in this work for so long. You work with people individually and groups. Do you see kind of a doubling down at this point in the media, pushing against the subject of UFOs, abductions, as opposed to the phenomena in general, which we're all more predisposed to talk about as adults and take seriously? Denise?
Well, I would
Can you
have
hear me,
to
Denise?
say that. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Wow.
Yes.
We have a time delay here of some sort.
Can you
Will we
hear me
fall-
now?
Yes, we can
No?
hear you, Denise. Yes.
Come back to me. Okay. All right. I would have to say that people are still very fearful of bringing forth their story. And when they do, if I speak with you, they back off. They're still fearful. And I still think that the media gets involved where not. And individuals who work in the field are still a little bit frightened themselves of how much they should say, what they should say, and how they should.
Breaking up a little bit, but we certainly get the gist of what you're saying. Mike, let me ask you, because you have come at this from such a unique angle, and you look at the subject with a slightly different eye than some of the rest of us. Do you see this this blowback happening, or is it coming up at all with people that you deal with, that it's fine to talk progressively about the UFO phenomenon and its implications for humanity, but the whole abduction thing is, I don't know, it's just a little too far out, don't you think? And maybe we should focus more on real world UFO things rather than this idea that they're taking people, and no, why would they want to do that? You know.
Well, my work, I have a very modest podcast, and I have a book that sells okay, but not great. And so I feel like I am a genuine outsider. Like I feel like I have not been invited to the table, and that's just fine, because at the table, they're talking about, little dots in the sky, where I'm talking with people directly who
Yes.
have had the contact experience. This is all the things that come along with contact experience, including extremely bizarre things that would be, if to bring this stuff to the table would mean really addressing the issues. I mean, so how many people in this, feel that because of their contact experiences, they have had increased psychic powers. They have had, yes, it's all over the place, or healing abilities, or synchronicities that defy all probability. So these are the types of things that happen that simply don't even fit the line. They simply could not even be brought up at a congressional hearing. The stuff is so strange. It is not my job to make some scientist happy. It's my job to do the very best work I can do at the highest level I can do it, with the most integrity that I can do it. And I am not in any way a trained author or a trained researcher, but I came at this as an artist, and I'm looking at this as a creative act. And so I feel what I can do is help share these stories at a very public forum.
Yes.
So people come to me with their stories. I don't want to put the story in a file cabinet and just close the file cabinet and never pull it out again. These stories need to be alive and shared. These stories are remarkable. just the few little points that I create that are never addressed in the bigger public forum. And so, I'm not interested in what's coming from the top down. I'm interested what I can bring from the bottom up to the not necessarily to the table, but I can put it out there. And I feel strongly that my book and that it has influenced how people are, and this is particularly the owl stuff. I've heard plenty of people talk about owls in their cases. They don't need to mention me. This is something that shows up. So there's an archetypal element, a symbolic, ancient symbol that is showing up in the context of these events. This is not going to get addressed in the halls of Congress, but it is something that people are talking about in their real direct experiences. Yeah. So I would rather have someone feel the power of someone's story. If you hear a story, if you share a story, there is a energy exchange that is much different than if you share a PowerPoint with data. And I'm not interested in, as I said, making the scientists happy. I'm interested in trying to do the very best work I can do.
Yeah. Well said. Kathleen, without digging too deep here or giving anything away, what project are you working on currently can you tell us a little bit about the project that addresses this situation the most, relative, of course, to Betty and Barney Hill's case?
Well, I'm not certain what project you're talking about, but the project that is occupying most of my time is to completely revamp my website. And my website is now going to address Betty and Barney Hill. I'm posting the archival records.
Good. I'm
posting maps. I have put up the transcripts of the hypnosis sessions. And I think that it is extraordinarily important that the public has access to accurate information. If they don't want to look at it, if they're frightened, that's fine. Don't look at it. But don't lie. I'm aware that a movie is being made. It's under production. It is a science fiction movie, but it is going to use the real names of Betty and Barney Hill. A Project Blue Book series, or one episode in the city series, also did a program on Betty and Barney Hill that was completely false. And when I see this kind of thing happen, I believe that there is some kind of impetus behind it.
Yes.
We know that it's disingenuous. We know that it's fabricated. And who is pushing the political agenda to destroy the best evidence UFO case in history?
Correct.
The first scientifically investigated case where, according to John Fuller, who wrote The Interrupted Journey, most of the scientists who investigated that case believed that it happened.
Yeah. It occurs to me that when I started working with Bud Hopkins 5 years into our friendship, but 1981, right after Missing Time came out, I was still struggling myself with the idea of abduction. My first exposure to it was my sister's account, and I would have been very happy to have found a way to make her wrong. if I could have, and if I didn't love my sister, rather than accept the reality of the possibility. And that's me, a fairly open-minded person who became very involved in this work. I think it's important to remember that the six of us are hardly a random sampling of the American population right now, or the world population. If disclosure as such simply came tomorrow, I think the six of us would be ready for it to whatever degree, and work our way into the new world. At the same time, I think most people are not ready, and that we have to be understanding at the same time as outraged. When it comes at the official level, and it really seems to me more and more that there is pressure applied one way or the other on these huge platforms like Netflix to treat certain subjects in certain ways. It may sound somewhat conspiratorial, but give me a break. It's pretty baseline conspiracy thinking, that there is good reason to not want people to take this seriously. And one reason might be, if this is true, then everything that I thought I knew is now open to question, and that makes me more uncomfortable than simply calling you a liar or an idiot or a cultist, or a mystic, or somebody who is a believer in these things that I have a tremendous problem with. Deb, have you ever had somebody criticize your memory, your truths, because in an overt kind of way, because in so many words, they couldn't handle that thought in their reality, so I need to kill the messenger, or at least give him a good kick in the shins?
Over the years, there's been a couple. And I always just say, you know what? If I hadn't seen it for myself, I would feel the same way. So you are more than entitled to have that feeling. Your feeling is valid, and that's fine. I'm not here to convince anybody of anything or make anyone believe me. I'm just here to tell my story as I remember it. Wow. So, and that's basic. And then I just, move on, and it's their problem, not mine. I mean, that's maybe not the best attitude to have, but what else can I do? I got to live this life every day, and I know I'm not. I said, if I hadn't seen these things for myself, I struggled. I still struggled, even though I did see them, because it didn't fit into the world that I was born in. And I had to figure out a way to not lose my mind, because I had 2 kids to raise and I couldn't do that, So, but yeah, so I've encountered that, but I don't let it get to me. Good.
Kathy, talking about anecdotal, circumstantial evidence, accounts rather than a carburetor from a flying saucer, for example, nice piece of physical evidence if you can get it, that the remastered recordings of Dr. Simon's regressive hypnotic sessions with Barney Hill are absolutely shattering to listen to. And unless you're the lowest kind of creature and just thinking, well, this guy's just playing a game here, he's making believe he's hypnotized and trying to act out what he thinks, your heart has to completely go out to him, the experience that he was having. And I know it affected the performance of James Earl Jones in the UFO incident, because we talked about it briefly in about 1985 when I had an opportunity to meet with him, and that was the role that I wanted to know about. Believe it or not, we have all just had our own missing time experience of 1 hour. We are halfway through this show. This is Peter Robbins with my guest Kathleen Marden, Deb Kauble, Denise Stoner, Dr. Irene Scott, and Mike Cellend. And we will be back in 5 minutes. Join us.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unexmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unexmedia.com or amazon.com. The Unex Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Cathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes, made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the Unex Network website at unexnetwork.com. That's unexnetwork.com. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
And Peter Robbins back here. Meanwhile Here on Earth is the show. My guests, Mike Cellend, Deborah Jordan Kauble, Kathleen Marden, Dr. Irene Scott, and Denise Stoner. Welcome back, my friends.
Great to be back.
And what did you do with your 5 minutes? No, not even necessary. Several years ago, I was approached along with a centrally important witness experiencer, abductee in an important, well-documented case, to work on a documentary series about her case. Some of you are familiar with it. It was based on a book written by Bud Hopkins called Witnessed, the True Story of the Brooklyn Bridge UFO Abductions. And myself and that central witness, Linda Napolitano, were led to believe that it would be an objective 3-part examination into what for me was the case I was more involved with for the longest time than any other case in my life work in UFO studies, except for the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident. The one central aspect of what we learned was the facts after the fact was that Linda and I were specifically not told that the production, the narrative, the direction of the storyline was controlled by Bud Hopkins' ex-wife, very embittered after their divorce. And this information, had we known it, would have immediately kept us from being involved, and that documentary series would have never been made. It used the opportunity that they got from Linda being willing to speak about her experiences with great courage, I thought, to destroy her in terms of attacking character and her believability. And because it is a situation that made me angry enough that for the first time in my life, I initiated a legal action against anyone, in this case, a number of individuals, companies. And because it is a case currently pending in New York State Supreme Court, I can't go into a lot beyond that about it. But Netflix knew what it was doing when it funded that project, and it's still running. Whether or not we are successful in this litigation, time will tell. But I felt I had to do something because of what they did and how they did it. And our situation is not unique. It's come up before with other platforms, other major cases. And again, I think if we can kind of pull back the camera a bit and look at this from long range, the subject of human beings being taken, many against their will, by other intelligences for reasons we can only make our best educated guesses about, even if it's all for something positive that we don't see, we only see a small part of the picture about. It is understandably completely unnerving. And for the species that likes to think of itself at the top of the food chain, allegorically and actually here on this little speck of dust flying through space called Earth, it sets up a very awkward challenge. And again, I think it's the root of what is coming down to us now again, where we can turn on the TV and watch somebody like Professor Avi Loeb at Harvard talk about the possibility that this huge meteorite-like structure may well be some kind of alien construct, or any number of other formally seemingly off the map possibilities. Mike, considering back when we first met through Bud Hopkins, when you were coming to New York to see him and I was working with him, your views on the subject have evolved, changed. You've had so much more immersion in the subject, not just your own experiences, but other people's. Does this make general sense to you, or does it seem like I'm kind of amping it up, that for the man or woman in the street, that this subject might be so fraught with anxiety, as opposed to the Tic Tacs and observations made by naval personnel in 2004 and witness testimony delivered in the House of Representatives, that we can expect to see more of this distorted treatment? Or your thoughts on the general subject? I'm starting to talk in circles.
People ask me all the time, how do you feel? How do you feel about disclosure? And I'm like, I don't care. I've had my disclosure. I'm fully, as far as I can tell, I saw a glowing bright light in my yard. This would have been in 1993, which is half my life ago. And there were 5 beings walking towards the house. This happened. And I can't like just, like I can't get excited about some little thing way off in space that a Harvard astronomer think, like I've talked to so many people who have seen these things in their yard that feel that they have been on board them, and I trust them, and I've seen the patterns in the stories they tell, and I can, there's a term I use, there is a flavor and mood to these experiences that is palpable. So if someone tells me their experience, I'm not saying that I have a built-in lie detector, but I have seen the pattern, and I've also seen how it changes people's lives, and nobody is asking for this. This stuff is thrust upon them in ways that has it was thrust upon me. It felt like, but it feels like I have no choice but to treat this subject very seriously, and then not be distracted by the noise, the that's out there. I can't get excited about the stuff that they're talking about. It's very interesting that they may or may not have some sort of a craft that may be in a hangar somewhere. There's a lot of talk, but not much of it from someone's firsthand account. There's people talking about I read a document that said this, or I overheard a conversation, or I was told by someone I trust. I'm talking to people one-on-one all the time. I've talked to people on the phone all the time. I spend my days, it feels like my full-time job is talking to people about their experiences. People are often very confused, very troubled, and 90% of what I do is simply say, you're not alone. Other people have had very similar experiences to what you're describing. And your question was, as far as the top-down structure that is creating this disclosure narrative, and it seems very clearly that they do not want this abduction stuff to be messy. Lee Spiegel, I spoke with Lee Spiegel at a conference. He's since passed on. This is going back probably a decade, close to a decade now. And I was at a conference, and he was writing for the Huffington Post. It was a different outfit then. They was doing more straight journalism at that point. And he was writing about the UFO subject. And I walked up to him at the conference and I said, Lee, my name is Mike. Nice to meet you. I read your stuff in the Huffington Post. I got to ask, how come you, I never see you covering the abduction stuff? And he says, I'm doing that on purpose. I want to be taken seriously. Right. And he could see the look on my face. So basically he was saying to me, I can't take you seriously. I think he's wise enough to know about the UFO abduction, Laura, but he had made a conscious decision that he wanted to be taken seriously. Now I have made the conscious decision. I don't care if anyone pays attention to me. I have to share these stories. I have to tell these stories with as much so anyone who is doing this type of work recognizes that there is something so strange and so bizarre that it would be absolutely 100% off-putting to anyone trying to look at it. And Bud's books were there's so much weird stuff in those books. So those books are now 35 years old, so there's issues here that, or more than that, really, I guess, as far as, but if you want to examine this, you have to be open to the strangest stuff. If you want to control the narrative, you have to ignore huge swaths of the data, of the available data. And I feel like it's my job to make sure that I'm, putting the stuff out there that's going to make people uncomfortable, putting the stuff out there that how to say this. So everyone must have had this experience where you're in a room, you tell a story, like a real story, a real set of experiences, and you can see that you have made, if there's 5 people around the table, you've made 4 of them very uncomfortable. They don't want to hear it. But that one person comes up to you afterwards and said, "Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
My wife has had this experience. She can't talk about it. I've had this experience. I can't tell anyone about it. Thank you for giving me the voice that I can't have."
Yeah.
I like drew cartoons for a living. Like I got no reputation to worry about. So I'm totally content talking about my own experiences and discussing. I want to go right to the edge of what is the
Yes.
fringe of this subject
Yes.
and really explore what's going on in the strangeness of this. And they're never going to ask me to talk in front of Congress, so I'm not trying to be any. Yeah. We're like, no way. I'm like,
No.
but this is so. You mentioned the Hynek TV series and the ridiculous thing they did with the Betty and Barney Hill thing, which was completely a comic book. So there was an episode where the main character who plays Alan Hynek, like at the end of the episode, he like drives off and he's on this hillside and he's like, what could really be going on here? And then everything in the car starts to rattle and a flying saucer goes right over his car. This was not based on fact that I can tell, but it was a completely fabricated thing. The flying saucer flies over the car, and then as the flying saucer eases off there's a silent moment, and then there's an owl hooting. Right? So this is like everyone, Mike, did you see the episode of the owl hooting? And they're like, yeah. But I'm not sure that I directly influenced that, but many people talked about the owl thing long before I came along. So that's been something that's out there. So there is this, it's not my job to wake people up. It's my job to be awake in the best way I can be, and to let this information, to make sure this information is out there and not hidden away in a file cabinet. That's one of my issues with MUFON as an organization, is they do not seem to share I've called people at MUFON, hey, can I look at some files? And they're like, no, like you cannot look at our files. And I'm like, well, what's the point of your organization if you can't, help the community out and share what maybe there's an article in the MUFON journal, but there's 10,000 websites where people are telling their own stories. All like right now, they're out there. People are speaking their truth, and we just got to honor that and make sure that those people who are out there, there's 6 of us right here who've done exactly that, and that these stories remain alive and accessible and not hidden away. Sorry, I held the floor there for a long time.
Yeah, no, important things that you've made clear. Irina, you have lived part of your life in academia. You are credentialed as a biologist, as an observer of the heavens, good contact with other species in terms of your veterinary background. Have you had experiences where you've interfaced dealing with colleagues who, whatever the area, there's mutual respect, but then they learn that you actually take seriously this idea of visitations from parts unknown and actually having been taken or, seen other intelligences, who then may discount you or get in your face a bit and argue the point?
Well, once a number of years ago, I was talking to one of my friends, and somehow we got into a subject of the most weird thing that ever happened to us. Well, she was so drunk she could hardly stand up for some reason. And so I told her my UFO story, and she just about fell off her chair laughing, even though she was drunk. So anyway, yeah, most of the time I had started having experiences before I ever knew anything about UFOs or anything like that, but I had another witness too. But it was when I was a kid, and I didn't even know, I never heard of UFOs, so it wasn't like the media influenced me or anything. And so, but I really wanted to be an astronomer, and I couldn't because they didn't hire females.
No.
So it was a long time before I got even slightly into astronomy. But anyway, yeah, I didn't mention it to hardly anybody.
Good.
And if I did, they really harassed me. Even when I was working for the DIA, my supervisors reported a UFO, and they were men, so they got respected and everything. So everybody harassed me. And I'm not the one that reported. I was just a female there working with them. And so anyway, I got harassed. People would find out a little bit, but I didn't get active in it until I was close to retiring. And then they still harassed, but now the government just is just a particle logical. They don't harass as much. But they, scientists think they know everything, I guess. They know everything in the universe, so there can't be anything except us here. I mean, we're the most intelligent life in the universe, according to what people say, which is baloney because they haven't been around the universe and they don't know what the universe is.
The word disclosure with the capital D, as brought up by Mike just before, there are several visions of it. The one you described, Mike, where it's happened, individual experiences, you, myself, the rest of us here on camera. Yes, disclosure has happened and we're aware of it. Then there is the process of disclosure that is actually going on around the world every day right now, where every day 1, 3, 9, 18, 37, however many people are now no longer skeptics because they have seen or experienced the phenomena we're talking about in no uncertain terms. And then there's that mythical idea of all the world leaders coordinating, being on major media at the same moment and going on camera and saying in their various languages, my fellow whatevers, it is my solemn duty to inform you that we are not alone, and we have been aware of it since at least 1947. We have been withholding the truth, especially America, where the cover-up began. And we just wanted you to know that we're not alone, and we'll be back to you with details as time passes. Well, if something like that happened or was theorized, yes, I acknowledge right now for all of you little people out there that we're not alone, and space people are real or interdimensionals or what you want to call it. Isn't that something? As opposed to, hang on, if what you're saying is true, then what about these things I've been hearing about for years of hybrids, half us, half them, missing pregnancies, actual abductions where human beings are taken? My thought here is, how can you responsibly inform the public in stages when, in this day and age, you hear one aspect of it, you go online, you learn everything else that's being alleged about it. How can you dig half a hole, existentially speaking, and only put forward some information with the hope that people will digest it and then be ready for a little bit more? And before turning this into the form of a question, I just wanted to say, in the early years of working with Bud Hopkins as his assistant, at a certain point, and it wasn't immediately, the idea and the seeming reality of these beings called hybrids came up, beings that are part us and part them. My reaction to this idea was, what's on TV? Let's have a sandwich. I cannot process this at all. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to think about it. Makes me so uncomfortable that I'm just going to shelve it somewhere inside my cerebral cortex. And it was more than a year before I had normalized the possibility of the idea. This is working with Bud on a regular basis and thinking my thoughts, and having a sister who is an abductee, that this was a real part of the phenomena. And I just needed to get to that point where I could take a breath and accept it. Have any of you gone through similar doors? You know, we're all quite advanced in our thinking, and to a degree our experiences, me less than you guys, but have you yourself, in your coming through your own life and facing various challenges and paranormal or otherwise, had that experience of, I can go no further right now, I need to take a step back and process this, and then figure out whether I just want to get off the train or blame somebody, or take that one step through the door and take a deep breath and see what happens? Denise? Denise, have you had that kind of experience? Kathleen, let me ask you.
Yes. Have I had that kind of experience? Indeed, I have. And, you know, I'm a person who felt that the only way I could find answers was to survey the entire field in all aspects of it. In the parts that are not acceptable to look into if you're the type of ufologist that I am.
Yeah.
But I did it. I did it because I was seeking answers. And if you don't look, you will never find. And so I looked, and it was my right to look. And as an educator, I have shared my findings with the interested public. It's not the whole United States. It's not the whole world. It's those individuals who are interested in this. That's what I think we all speak to. Most of us aren't trying to convince everyone that this is real. I've never been in favor of full disclosure. I don't think that people are ready for this. And I think that the reason for that is the fact that people have had abductions. People, mostly against their will. People have been traumatized by this. There's a lot of speculation about it. There have been horrible things said about it, and there have been very, very nice and good things. And people have developed the ability to heal. People have become empaths. People are psychic, who have contact with these non-humans. So there are many positive aspects of it, even though the media tends to focus on the negative. So in terms of not being able to go any further, there are places where I chose not to go further. I did not look further into the most horrific tales. It was just too much for me. But I surveyed everything that, even the weirdest parts of it, I immersed myself into it. I did experiments to learn more. And sometimes it was frightening, but I learned. And that was the most important thing, is that process and the information that you can learn from this.
Yeah.
That's what I think is most important. And so I think that there are many of us who are interested, who share these experiences, and that we should be able to share this among one another and for the truth to be shared.
Kathy, that moment in your life when I think you were getting ready for school and your Aunt Betty called your mother ostensibly to talk about what had happened the night before. You already knew that you were having these kinds of experiences and it was part of your private life, as I recall, or was that one of those moments of having to confront this Alice through the looking glass, and if what my aunt is telling my mother is true, then everything I thought I knew is now open to question kind of moment?
Well, I had returned home from school in the afternoon and I walked into the house. My mother was on the telephone with Betty. This is not a topic that my family ever discussed. I lived across the street from my grandparents. My grandfather had been a selectman for the town. He was the chairman of the board of selectmen, which is comparable to being a mayor.
Yeah.
My grandmother had been a union organizer during the Great Depression.
Wow.
They were welfare agents for the town that we lived in. We were a political family.
Yes.
We didn't discuss UFOs. It's the first time I had ever heard about this. When my mother told me what had happened, what my aunt had told her. And I was extraordinarily curious about it. Nancy Drew was my favorite book. Girl Detective. I wanted to learn all that I could. And so I harassed my father until he drove the family to Betty's and Barney's house. They lived about 20 miles away from my childhood home. And I was able to speak with Betty myself. I was able to look at the evidence, the spots on the trunk of the car, all of those things. And I think that was the beginning. Now, I had experiences in my life, and I thought that everyone was like me.
Yeah.
That maybe some insights, some psychic sense, that kind of thing. I had no idea that I was different than the general population, than all of the kids that I went to school with. I just thought everybody was like that.
You mentioned that you come from a very political family. I wanted to include that one wonderful photo that I absolutely love of your Betty and Barney. Is this a honeymoon era kind of picture?
That might have been taken when they got married, because there were in the picture, there are suitcases next to them.
Okay.
So yes, it could. They were married in New Jersey in 1961. 1960, I mean.
Okay.
So yeah, it could have been.
Deductive reasoning, Miss True. The other picture that I chose is one that fascinated me when you first sent it years ago, and this is a very special photo. Can you tell us the circumstances? We see Betty and Barney in the lower right there, and we see you on the upper left, third from the right.
Yes. That is just evidence of my family's involvement in politics. I was in high school. I was a junior in high school at the time, and I was on the student council. I campaigned as much as I could. I was invited to Lyndon Johnson's inauguration. My aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney, and I went to the inauguration together.
Wow.
And it was one of the best experiences of my life. I feel so fortunate to have been able to do that. But
Yeah.
it's just evidence that we were a political family.
Yeah. Boy, I'll say. Deb, any thoughts on, we've talked about this on and off for years, but like 6 weeks ago, we were together at that wonderful conference in Michigan Contact, with Bill Konkoletsky and other friends. And I guess we could call that a preaching to the choir kind of audience. They were there overall because they're already serious about the subject, although there was, I think, a fairly respectable percentage of people that were at their very first UFO conference, which is always good to see, and I'm seeing it more and more. Same thing in September, just a few weeks before at Exeter, New Hampshire UFO Conference and Festival. How does one instill in folks that this is simply something that happens, even though it seems very exotic to you because it's not happened to you? But I appreciate that you may have questions about it or even doubt it because, again, if it's true, then everything you thought you knew is now open to revision, and I'd rather kill the messenger or, maybe undercut your credibility. Do you have any basic way of, addressing that when somebody comes up to you and says, so you really think you were abducted by aliens?
I've never really had anybody actually come up and say that to me, but I'm sure they think it. I just, when I go and do those things, I feel compelled to go and do those things and to speak. Yeah. My experiences started out at an early age when I was young, and I was like, like Kathleen said, I thought everybody, was this way. I didn't realize that, not everybody had these experiences or things for the longest time. So, and then they started getting scary and painful and difficult. Like June 30, 83 was like the peak of that. But then it started to change slowly, and I started to change, and I felt compelled to go out and tell my story because I met so many people when I was with Bud, when he would go and speak, that were just like me and were afraid, and I was changing. Something was happening inside of me. And now today, I go and I talk whenever anyone asks me to, because I want, just like Mike said, I could talk to a room with 100 people in it, but if there's like one or two people in there that I said something they needed to hear, then I did what I came here to do. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel compelled to do that. And the negative narrative that I see around the whole disclosure thing right now, and the stigma, that I see, even with like pilots and people that have a lot more to lose than me. Like I said before, I have a high school diploma and a beauty school certificate. I don't really care what anybody thinks about me. I have nothing to lose. The people that I love and I know and I care about what they think, they have all been here with me my whole life. And if they didn't have experiences when they met me, they started. So that's all I care about. And the people out there like me who feel alone and feel afraid. I'm trying to fight the stigma. I'm trying to fight the fear. It's hard to live with fear like that. And 42 years ago, I'm out here in Indiana in the middle of nowhere with no cell phone, no internet, feeling like I'm on a deserted island, with the exception of my family and friends. For that, I'm thankful. And that was a blessing because most people don't have that.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be, I feel like the Johnny Appleseed of come and take my hand. Even if somebody heard something I said and they thought, oh God, I don't know about that, it's in there. And that's all it takes sometimes for them to flip their switch and send them on the journey they're supposed to go on. I don't know. I just feel like that's part of what I'm supposed to be doing, is putting myself out there. And like I said, I guess it's easy because I don't really care what people think. So
you reminded me of something very funny and very important, which is, this is such a serious overlapping series of topics. I mean, it's heavy as lead. It's got so much gravitas. And sometimes the only thing that we can do is lighten the hell up and laugh. And I am thinking now about dear Bud Hopkins, and who, those of us that knew him knew he had a great sense of humor, and often a dry one. And he knew instinctively how to deploy humor at a very serious moment and for me, I think of it physiologically, where, you're all wrapped up in this stuff, your breathing's getting kind of shallow, your blood's retreating toward the middle of your body, and you're more and more contact with yourself, but not the people around you. If you laugh, if somebody can make you laugh at that moment, you're taking in oxygen.
Yeah.
Your blood is going to the surface. You're reconnecting with people. You get a little more courage and you go on. But occasionally in lectures, in the middle of seemingly a completely unrelated thing, say, that reminds me of a joke. And then he'd stop, he'd tell the joke, everybody'd laugh, had nothing to do with the subject, and he'd go right on again. When you were talking, you reminded me of a joke in that becoming a beautician, you get your certification in cosmetology. And it was a joke about an idiot guy trying to hit on a beautician and saying, I'm just really impressed with who you are. How do you deal with the weightlessness?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's
right. Not all at once, folks, but I told my joke.
It's like I want people just to, like I said, I don't expect people to believe me when I tell them my stories, because they're pretty out there. I know that, but I just want them to open their minds and their eyes and be aware of the world around them, because one of these days they may find themselves in my shoes, and I don't want them to have to go through what I went through. I mean, because I've grown and changed so much from beginning to now, over the last 50 years. And it's like there's a whole world around us that I'm plugging into, and other people like me are plugging into. We're recognizing it, and I'm kind of like want to drag everybody with me on on my journey. I don't know. That's why I tell my stories. That's why I tell people of the experiences that I had. And I feel like the medical part and the other physical evidence that I have is like bringing the receipts that maybe would get the academics to pay more attention, because they need that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, what really matters to me are the other experiencers, and if I've helped someone feel better, then that's all I care about.
On that note, Denise, you've been involved for years in a job I have tremendous respect and admiration for, which in an informal sense is running something of a support group. People who meet up to discuss their experiences and hopefully gain some amount of recentering or peace. That word closure rarely cuts it for me, but in these kind of small, safe groups that you're more than familiar with, can you confirm for us that, say, a relatively new member who maybe didn't talk to anybody before they talked to you, isn't familiar with the literature, is still extremely on edge about these experiences, the level of profound value that folks can get in that position, just being in a room with other people who have had similar experiences and kind of normalize themselves with themselves and are there to support and move on. Is this something that you observe regularly or irregularly in your group, where individuals genuinely get to come out of that frightened place they have been really all their lives in some cases, and now realize this is something they may have, but it doesn't have them, so to say?
The groups and what I have found through the years has pretty much remained the same. An individual who shows up at a meeting for the first time and isn't quite sure what it's all about or why he's there even, will sit possibly and listen through the first meeting for their first time. They just listen, get a knowing on, do they feel comfortable or not? They'll come back again. And you can see when they're ready, and it just starts to burst out of them. And they tell the whole room, and everybody in the room hears and understands, supports and listens, and may comment or compare their experience to the one that's speaking. And the comfort level comes down to perfect for that individual. It feels like, well, I finally said something. It's all out. And no one's laughing, no one's cutting me to ribbons. And it's the same thing pretty much over and over again. Kathleen had been to many of my support meetings, and I think she would agree with what I've said, that once they spill the beans, they are so much more better off and comforted in the fact that everyone listened.
You remind me, at heart, all fear, I think, is fear of the unknown. Substitute whatever your favorite widgets are. Am I going to, live a long, happy life? My kid's going to work out, to be well-adjusted citizens? Is the earth going to blow up? We are being invaded by beings from other planets? Or is the ecological crisis going to, destroy humanity? There's really only two things going on. We call them different things. One is fear. The other is love, expansion, contraction. I guess in the world of UFO studies, the implications of the abduction phenomena is as good an example as we can get of fear of the unknown. Do you find, I'm thinking of that wonderful Rodgers and Hammerstein song from South Pacific, I Whistle a Happy Tune. The idea being that if I make believe I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid. But in fact, that actually can happen. We can reprogram ourselves. And often it is within the knowledge of this person on my right went through what I've been through or going through right now. This person across from me has been through something even more shocking to me. And, they've got their dreams. They're, in love. They've got a business that they enjoy. They're an artist or whatever. And they're not letting this thing run their life, even though they know it could come back tonight or next week. They have it. It doesn't have them, so to say, philosophically. Mike, your feeling on that?
I just had to unmute.
There you go. Yeah.
So say again the question, just.
Yeah. Just that the idea of going through that door, so to say, of there's great fear, and because of what other you've been to support group meetings, we were there together.
Mm-hmm. So you talk to anyone who's had this experience, pretty much anyone, they're gonna talk about like a few years where like they questioned their sanity. So I'll speak directly to that. I spent 7 years totally, like, absolutely thinking I had gone insane, because the things that were happening to me could not happen. Like, I was like just given the model of reality that I was given by my parents and the church and my schools, and just consensus reality. Like, I was experiencing things that could not happen, and that creates such tension in your life, and there comes a point when you can, like, I had essentially crumbled, and then I had to, like, rebuild myself again. Like, okay, there came a point when it simply didn't serve me to be so broken about this. Peter, you knew me in those years. I was really struggling. Bud knew me in those years, and then there came a point when I just realized, like, I cannot deny that this is real.
Yes.
And with that came, here's what happened. There came a clarity, because I had spent so much time with a little voice in my head that says, this can't be true. This can't be happening. Can't happen to you. Can't, like couldn't happen to me. And then once I said, no, this really happened. This is real. I can no longer doubt my own direct experience. That tape loop got pulled out of my head. Things didn't get necessarily easier, but I no longer had that voice in my head, and it has never come back. So I can certainly get overwhelmed by this stuff, but I think everyone knows that chapter that someone has to go through. Some people can go through it in a few months, and some people may never get through it completely. But for me, and then I don't know what it is about me, but I was very, very, very open about it right from the beginning. I was so open about my struggles. Like, this is what I'm worried has happened to me. I would just tell people about it. Yeah. And I'll tell you, it ruined some friendships. I lost some friends, and I gained other friends.
Yes.
And I think all of us understand that too. And I feel like my brother and sister have been very supportive. They don't understand it, but they have been supportive in their very own ways. And that has meant that's meant the world to me. Yeah. That I can sort of speak my truth. And I'm very cautious. Like, if I don't know something, I'll say I don't know it. And if I'm speculating, I'll make sure to say I'm speculating. But the stuff that I feel has happened to me, I try to tell those stories with as much clarity as possible. And then also talk about my emotional state in those moments and the doubts. So I think but the coming forward has been, for me, the fear of coming forward was so much worse than the actual coming forward itself. Yes. That was the softest landing when I came forward with my own stuff. I found that that for the most part, I got no pushback from anyone. And as Deb said, people may say stuff behind my back, but I have had essentially zero pushback, besides maybe some YouTube comments or something like that, which I've learned to ignore. But I found that for the most part, people have been remarkably understanding and remarkably interested in this genuine mystery.
Yes. I think that is the direction we collectively are moving more and more toward, and that it will simply continue to expand every year. There will be the official kabuki play soap opera going on in the background in Congress and on our televisions and computer screens, but that world of genuine people who have passed through that door and dealt with it and come through it. Kathleen, any questions coming out of this for any of our other guests that you might have?
Oh, My goodness, I hadn't even been thinking about asking people questions. So give me a minute, Peter.
Yeah, sure. I will say again, remembering my first heading into that doorway when my sister was speaking to me about her abduction related memories for the first time, this years before the term gray entered the English language, or I had ever heard of the idea of UFO abductions. And she's talking about going up and walking through a curved metal hallway with these beings, and then being on the table and being examined. And my first reaction was, oh, my sister's gone insane. My second reaction was, 6 seconds ago, it was perfectly okay to have 5 flying saucers with windows on them hanging over the neighbor's house across the street. But your sister's crazy. Just stop and listen to what she's saying. Talk about working without a net. Kathleen, we're heading into our last minutes, and we began the show with your thoughts. I'd like to know, as we head out, any closing thoughts, or I mean, this is such an open-ended subject, and this discussion is continuing to keep it very open-ended. But thinking out loud for a moment, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, one thought is that Congress has decided not to fund the military program on UFOs. So I don't know if there will be any more congressional hearings without funding. So now I think that we're in a position where we're probably going to have to rethink all of this. Where is it going now? I suspect that we will hear far less from military whistleblowers. We do know that they were given protection initially, but that the rug was pulled out from underneath them, and they no longer have protection. I have been a person who sort of looks, I'm highly analytical. So I'm aware that in about 2013, television programs on this topic stopped bringing out deniers who gave false information at the end of the program. And for about 10 years, that continued. But I'm aware that the deniers are coming back. My greatest concern is the criminal activity by some, I don't even know what you should call them, deniers, but the criminal behavior that they have towards certain individuals in this field. And I want to encourage anyone who has this happen, people who undergo physical attacks, people whose lives are threatened. I believe very strongly that you need to make a report with law enforcement, because this is a criminal activity. It's against the law to behave this way. I often wonder what has happened to our people. In the America in which I was raised, we were taught to respect others. There was civility. And somehow we have lost that. Not in everybody. A lot of people still behave properly. But something has happened where the boundary seems to have moved between what is okay and what is not okay in terms of human behavior.
Agreed.
So I'm very concerned about the increase in really criminal behavior by individuals who seem to run in groups, who work together, and who actually should be in court, or maybe not doing time, but certainly doing community service.
Amen.
For their behavior.
Again, like you say, make a report. Reach out to establishment authorities if it is warranted. And I regret to say our time is gone. Thank you all for what I consider a very important discussion. Mike Cellend, Deborah Jordan Kauble, Kathleen Marden, Dr. Irene Scott, and Denise Stoner, my dear friends, stay well. And for our audience, stand up for what you believe in. Also stay well, and we'll see you next week.